It was the night of December 18th, 1943. The HMS Agincourt, a formidable British battleship, sliced through the quiet expanse of the South Pacific. Under a cloak of secrecy, the ship had been sent on a covert mission. Her crew, mostly young men far from home, braced themselves for another night of routine patrol. But tonight something was different. The sea was calm, the sky clear, yet a heavy air of unease hung over the ship. Lieutenant Samuel Richards stood at the helm, his hands steady, but his mind restless. He had heard the rumors, whispers about strange happenings in these waters. But like most of the crew, he dismissed them as mere superstition, tales to pass the long nights at sea. There had been strange sightings over the last few weeks, a shadowy figure near the ship's deck, whispers in the wind that no one could quite place. But tonight, there was a palpable tension in the air that none of them could ignore. "All clear, sir," his first officer reported, a young man named Jackson, his face pale in the dim light. Samuel nodded, barely acknowledging the report. His eyes remained fixed on the dark horizon, scanning the waters for any sign of trouble. It was then, with the clock striking 11:15 p.m., that the Agincourt's radar operator called out from the control room. His voice was tight with panic. "Lieutenant, we have an anomaly. The ship's radar is picking up something. Something large moving fast, and then it disappears." "What do you mean, disappears?" Samuel asked sharply, his heart skipping a beat. I can't explain it, sir. It's there one moment, then gone the next. Almost like it was swallowed by the sea." Samuel rushed to the radar room, his boots echoing down the narrow corridor. The operator's hands were shaking as he pointed to the screen. The blip had vanished, leaving no trace behind. "Get the crew to battle stations," Samuel ordered. His voice was calm, but inside a deep sense of dread began to take hold. Something was wrong. But what? And where had that mysterious object gone? Within minutes, the crew scrambled into position, tension rippling through the ship. It was then that the distress call came in. A garbled transmission, filled with static and half-finished sentences, reached the Agincourt's communications room. "This is the Agincourt. Requesting immediate hostile static, can't..." The transmission cut off abruptly. "Damn it, we need to get that signal back." Samuel barked into the radio, but his words were swallowed by the storm of static. For a moment, there was only the deafening hum of electronics and the frantic whisper of crew members over their radios. And then, nothing. Silence. The ship's lights flickered. A deep shudder ran through the hull. It felt as though the very bones of the Agincourt were trembling. Samuel gripped the edge of a table, trying to steady himself. He glanced toward the radar operator, whose face had drained of all color. The operator's voice cracked as he muttered, "Sir, there's nothing. No ship, no debris, nothing. Just open water." "What the hell do you mean, nothing?" Samuel demanded. But before the operator could respond, the ship lurched again, this time with a violent force that sent several crew members tumbling to the ground. The lights went out. "Battle stations," Samuel shouted, his voice hoarse, but there was no answer. The radio had gone dead. The Agincourt was adrift in an unnatural, ghostly silence. Hours passed. Or perhaps it was only minutes. Time seemed irrelevant. The crew fought to regain control, but the ship was no longer responding to their commands. The fog thickened, swallowing the ship whole. Then, just as suddenly as it had all begun, it ended. The Agincourt was gone, vanished from all radar and all sight. No distress calls. No wreckage. Not a single trace. Back on the shores of Britain, families waited for news that would never come. In a dimly lit room, the naval brass sat in silence, unable to offer answers. The Agincourt and her crew had simply disappeared. In the years that followed, the disappearance of the HMS Agincourt became one of the most puzzling and debated mysteries of World War II. Some claimed the ship had been sunk by enemy fire, others whispered of a freak accident. But there were no survivors. No wreckage. Just the lingering question, what had happened that night? The story of the Agincourt was buried in official records, a cold case left to the sands of time. Until one fateful day, 60 years later, when a mysterious tape surfaced, its contents would shatter everything the world had come to believe about that night. It was March 2006, inside a damp, poorly lit storage room of the Imperial War Archives in London. Sarah Williams brushed the dust off a forgotten box marked in faded ink. HMS Agincourt, classified, restricted 1944. She frowned. The name sounded familiar, one of those unsolved wartime enigmas that always seem to vanish into redacted reports and government silence. Sarah was a post-war historian, specializing in missing military operations. She had gone through hundreds of files, but something about this one felt different. The box was heavier than expected. Inside, she found a collection of corroded files, a moldy ship's manifest, and an old metal canister labeled T-47 recording, do not play. Her pulse quickened. She glanced around. The archive room was empty. Only the faint hum of fluorescent lights filled the silence. Sarah carried the canister to the playback room and loaded the reel onto the old machine. At first, there was only static, a long hiss, the kind that made your teeth clench. Then came the faint sound of waves, a low mechanical rumble, and voices. Bridge to engine room, report status. Engines holding steady, sir. But the compass, it's spinning again. Sarah froze. The voices were crisp, hauntingly human. She could almost feel the tension of that night. Then came another sound, something metallic dragging as if a chain was being pulled across steel. What was that? Starboard deck reports movement. No visual. Wait, lights. Off the port bow. The voices grew frantic. It's not a ship, sir. It's static. A long silence. Then faintly, almost whispering. They're coming through the fog. Sarah's heart pounded. The voices became distorted, mixed with what sounded like screaming and overlapping static. Then a loud, deafening bang, followed by a single chilling sentence. It's inside the ship. The tape cut abruptly. Sarah sat motionless. Her fingers trembled as she stopped the reel. The room seemed to grow colder. She rewound the tape and replayed the ending. The same sounds. The same words. The same cut. Her rational mind told her it must be some kind of radio interference, maybe a corrupted military transmission. But something deep inside her refused to accept that. She checked the tape's origin. It had been filed under Recovered Naval Audio, March 1944, with no explanation of how or where it had been found. The HMS Agincourt had vanished in December 1943. That meant the tape was recorded after the ship disappeared. That night, Sarah returned home but couldn't sleep. The phrase, "it's inside the ship," looped endlessly in her mind. What could that mean? A bomb, a saboteur, or something else entirely? She began her research the next morning. In the war archives, she found that the Agincourt had been one of the most advanced British warships of its time, equipped for long-range missions and radar tracking. Its disappearance had never been officially explained, just lost in action. But when Sarah dug deeper, she noticed something odd. Every officer who had been in communication with the Agincourt that night was either missing or had died within a year of the event. A pattern began to form, a trail of silence. Then, tucked behind a faded document, she found a letter dated February 12, 1944. It was addressed to Naval Command, Confidential Division, written by an unknown officer stationed in Fiji. To whomever reads this, I am reporting a strange occurrence. The villagers here speak of a ship swallowed by the sea after a blinding light appeared beyond the reef. They say the ocean took the men, but their voices linger in the waves. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Could it be possible? Could the tape she found be a recording of those very voices? She copied the letter and returned home, her mind spinning with possibilities. She decided to record her own notes that evening, March 15, 2006. Personal log, Sarah Williams. The tape from the Agincourt defies all logic. If the recording is genuine, it means there was communication after the official disappearance date. Either the records were falsified or someone, didn't want the truth to surface. I need to find where this tape came from originally. As she spoke into her recorder, she felt an odd vibration through the table, a faint humming noise coming from the metal canister where she'd placed the reel. She turned toward it, uneasy. The machine was off. The tape wasn't even loaded, but she could hear faint static from inside the canister, like a whisper trapped in metal. Sarah backed away slowly, her breath shallow. The sound faded, leaving behind only silence, and a growing sense that the dead weren't quite done speaking. That night she made a decision. She would find out where the recording was discovered. Whatever the truth was, human or otherwise, the crew of the Agincourt deserved answers. It was April 2006. The hunt for answers had begun in earnest. Sarah Williams found herself standing before the grand, imposing gates of the Royal Naval Museum in Portsmouth, a place of maritime history and warships, yet today, it felt more like a fortress guarding long-buried secrets. She was no stranger to these walls, having spent years researching military enigmas, but this case, the HMS Agincourt, felt different. It was as if something were calling her to uncover the truth. Inside, she was greeted by the dusty smell of old records and the quiet hum of history preserved in stone and wood. Sarah had requested access to personal letters and military logs regarding the Agincourt. She had hoped for more answers, but what she discovered left her with more questions. Every official report she reviewed was vague, signed by unnamed officers and filed under top secret or declassified no further action. After several hours of combing through piles of paper, Sarah stumbled upon an old, leather-bound journal that had not been part of the official records. It was titled, "The Lost Ship, Personal Accounts of the Crew." The author's name was hidden by a fading stamp, but the content was chilling. The journal was written by a sailor named Thomas Davis, a crew member on the Agincourt who had managed to escape before the ship's disappearance, or so he claimed. His entries were cryptic, filled with sketches and descriptions of strange occurrences before the ship vanished. February 14th, 1943. Something is wrong with the ship. I swear I hear things at night, whispers. The others say I'm imagining it, but I've seen shadows move in the corners of my eyes. Last night a man went overboard, but when they pulled him back up, he was different. His eyes were wild, and his voice cracked like an old man's. He didn't remember how he fell. The entries continued, each one growing more disturbed. Davis wrote about mysterious fogs that seemed to envelop the ship at night, waves that swelled without explanation, and strange glowing lights seen in the distance. His final entry was dated December 15th, 1943, just 3 days before the Agincourt disappeared. December 15th, 1943. Tonight they took another one. The men are scared. I can feel something in the air. The captain, he knows. He's not telling us the whole truth. I don't care anymore. I'm leaving. I will swim to shore if I must. Something is coming. I feel it. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine as she read the last entry. What was this? Could this sailor have known something? Or was it just the ramblings of a frightened man? Determined to find out more, she contacted the British Military Records Office, requesting any information about Thomas Davis. His name did not appear on any official casualty lists, nor was there any record of his discharge. It was as if Thomas Davis had never existed. With no other leads in Britain, Sarah turned her attention to the South Pacific. She began researching the islands near where the Agincourt had last been seen. An article she discovered about an obscure local myth caught her eye. It spoke of a sea spirit that haunted sailors during times of war, taking the souls of men who ventured too far from shore. The name of the spirit was lost to history, but the tale was repeated across many villages in the region. In late May, Sarah flew to Fiji, where the ship had last been stationed. She met with local historians and spoke to the few remaining elders who still remembered the war. One elder, a woman named Mara, told her a strange tale from her childhood. They came to us in the night, the sailors. I was just a girl, but I remember the men who came ashore. They were different, pale, with eyes that were too wide. They spoke of things I couldn't understand. When they left, they said the ocean would take them and that they would never return. Some say they became part of the sea itself. Mara's words haunted Sarah. Had the Agincourt's crew become victims of some ancient force, lost to a myth that had claimed their lives long before the war began? That evening, Sarah sat by the beach watching the sun set over the Pacific. As the light dipped below the horizon, she felt the unmistakable weight of history pressing down on her. The Agincourt had vanished, but the answers lay somewhere beneath the waves, hidden from view, waiting for the right person to uncover them. The next day, Sarah visited the island's historical museum and found a map of the South Pacific. She marked the Agincourt's last known position, and then, with the help of a local fisherman, they set out to trace the ship's final route. The waters were calm, but as they drifted further from the shore, Sarah couldn't shake the sense of being watched. The fog rolled in thick and the boat's engine sputtered eerily. Then, just as they were about to reach the area where the ship was thought to have disappeared, Sarah saw something in the water. A glimmer, faint and ghostly. It was almost as if the sea itself had revealed a hidden memory. a shimmer of the past refusing to be forgotten. But before Sarah could speak, a violent tremor shook the boat, and the glimmer vanished beneath the water. She grabbed hold of the side of the boat, her heart racing. What was that? Had she just witnessed something that should have remained lost to time? It was early June, and Sarah Williams was standing at the edge of a weathered dock in Fiji, her heart racing with both excitement and dread. The last few weeks had brought more questions than answers, and yet she felt closer to the truth than ever. She had followed every lead, retraced the Agincourt's final route, and spoken to every witness who could remember the lost ship. Now she was standing on the brink of something that might shatter everything she had thought she knew about the HMS Agincourt. The journey had led her to an uninhabited island, far from the main shipping lanes. The place had been untouched by modern civilization, a place where time seemed to stand still. There were no more maps or records that spoke of the island's existence beyond vague mentions in old naval documents, but Sarah had uncovered an old, handwritten letter, buried deep in the archives, that suggested the Agincourt had made an unscheduled stop here just days before it disappeared. Sarah stepped off the boat, her boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. The island was covered in dense foliage, and the air was thick with the scent of salt and damp wood. She followed the local fishermen, who had been hesitant at first to take her here, warning her that some things on the island were best left undisturbed. But Sarah was resolute. The truth, whatever it was, had to be uncovered. As they walked deeper into the jungle, she noticed something odd, an unnatural stillness in the air. The birds had stopped singing, and there was a heaviness in the atmosphere. Her senses heightened as she noticed strange markings on the trees, as though something had scratched the bark. These weren't natural marks. They were too deliberate. The fisherman, sensing her unease, stopped. "It's not safe to go further," he warned. But Sarah, driven by her need for answers, urged him to continue. "Just a little further," she pleaded. "Please." After what felt like an eternity, they reached a clearing where the jungle opened up to reveal a strange, weathered stone structure. It was shaped like a small ancient temple, its walls covered in carvings that Sarah couldn't decipher. But there was something chilling about it, the way it seemed to pulse with an energy that was almost alive. Sarah's eyes widened when she noticed something in the center of the structure. A large, black stone slab partially submerged in the earth, with carvings around its edges that looked eerily similar to the markings she had seen earlier. It was then that the fisherman spoke again, his voice trembling. "Some say this is where they went, the men from the Agincourt. Some say the spirits of the lost sailors are still here, trapped by the sea spirit, the island. It changes you." Sarah knelt down beside the slab, her hand brushing against the cold stone. The air around her grew thick with an oppressive weight, and she could feel a strange sensation crawling up her spine. Her mind raced. Was this the site of the Agincourt's final resting place? Was this where they had vanished, taken by something not of this world? Then, as if on cue, the ground beneath her feet shifted. The stone slab moved slightly, revealing a narrow gap. A chill ran through Sarah's veins as she realized that the slab wasn't just a monument, it was a seal, hiding something beneath it. With a sudden surge of energy, Sarah pushed the slab further aside. It was difficult at first, but then, with one final heave, the stone slid away, revealing a dark, hollow space below. The fisherman recoiled, muttering a prayer under his breath. But Sarah, undeterred, climbed into the dark space. The air inside was stale, and her flashlight barely cut through the thick blackness. She moved carefully, step by step, until she stumbled upon something. A chest. Its wood was decayed, but it was unmistakably old. She reached out and lifted the lid, revealing something even more bizarre. An assortment of personal belongings. Letters, photographs, and, most chilling of all, a battered journal. As she flipped through the journal's pages, her heart skipped a beat. It was the same handwriting from the letters she had found in the archives, the sailor Thomas Davis. But this was different. The entries weren't just ramblings of fear. They were accounts of something far darker. "We tried to leave, but the sea won't let us. The water rises up at night, whispering our names. I hear them now, calling to me. The fog is getting thicker, and we're running out of time. I saw Captain Hargrave's face today, his eyes. They're gone. It's like he's already dead." The final entry was dated December 16th, 1943, the day after the Agincourt disappeared. The last words read, I don't know if we'll survive the night. The sea spirit is real. It's taking us one by one. I hear it calling to us from the depths. It's inside the ship. Sarah sat back, the journal trembling in her hands. She had come to the island searching for answers, and she had found them, though they were not the answers she had expected. The Agincourt had not simply disappeared. It had been claimed by something older than war. A force from the depths of the ocean, a spirit that had taken the souls of the crew, trapping them forever in a watery grave. Suddenly, the faint sound of whispers filled the air around her. At first it was so soft she thought it was her imagination, but then it grew louder. Sarah's pulse quickened as she looked around, realizing she was not alone. The air was thick, suffocating, as though the island itself was alive, breathing with the presence of those who had vanished. She backed away slowly, clutching the journal to her chest. The whispers faded as she turned to leave the dark space, but one voice remained, lingering in her mind. It was faint but unmistakable. A voice from the past, from the crew of the Agincourt, saying one final thing. Thank you for hearing our story. As Sarah left the temple and made her way back to the boat, she glanced at the sea where the horizon met the waves. The truth had been uncovered, but at what cost? The Agincourt was lost and its crew were still there in the deep, calling to the living from a place where time and memory had no hold. The spirits had been freed, but the mystery remained.